once upon a time, in a cozy little room filled with stuffed animals and scattered toys, there stood a small plastic T-Rex named Rexy, his tiny arms outstretched as if ready for adventure. He spent his days perched on a windowsill, watching the world outside with wide, curious eyes. One quiet evening, as a soft breeze tousled the curtains and golden sunlight spilled across the floor, Rexy slipped from his spot and tumbled through the open window, landing with a gentle thud in the backyard below. To his surprise, the grass beneath him wasn't just grass. It was a towering green sea, each blade swaying like the canopy of a vast jungle. The air hummed with the whispers of crickets and the distant rustle of leaves, and fireflies blinked like tiny stars in the gathering twilight. Rexy's tiny plastic heart swelled with a quiet wonder as he took his first wobbly steps into this strange new world, his tiny claws brushing against pebbles that seemed as big as boulders. The scent of damp earth and blooming flowers wrapped around him like a cozy blanket. And somewhere in the distance, a lone frog croaked a lullaby to the setting sun. He didn't know how he'd get back home, but for now, the jungle beckoned, a place where every shadow held a secret and every rustle promised a gentle adventure. Rexy wobbled deeper into the emerald jungle, his stubby legs sinking slightly into the damp earth with each step, while above him, the branches of dandelions and clover leaves arched like ancient trees in a whispering cathedral of green. The twilight had painted everything in soft blues and purples, and the air smelled of rain-soaked soil and something sweet, perhaps the fragrance of tiny night-blooming flowers hidden in the grass. Fireflies drifted lazily around him, their glowing paths tracing loops and spirals as if inviting him to follow. Rexy tilted his head, watching one particularly bold flicker land briefly on his snout before zipping away, and he couldn't help but let out a silent, plastic chuckle. The jungle was alive in ways his windowsill had never been, humming with quiet chirps and rustles that wove together into a gentle, wordless lullaby. Then, beside a pebble that rose like a smooth gray mountain, he noticed something strange, a trail of tiny, shimmering footprints pressed into the dewy moss, glinting faintly under the firefly light. They were too small for any creature he knew, and they led off toward a tuft of tall grass that shivered slightly, as if someone or something had just slipped through it. Curious, Rexy leaned closer, his tiny claws brushing the edge of the nearest print, and for the first time since his fall, he felt a flutter of quiet excitement. Who had made these prints? And where were they going? The night seemed to hold its breath around him, the rustling leaves hushing as if waiting for his next move. Rexy hesitated only a moment before setting off after the trail, his heart full of gentle determination. The jungle, after all, had secrets to share, and perhaps, just perhaps, a friendly guide to help him find his way. Rexy followed the trail of shimmering footprints, each one glowing faintly like a tiny star pressed into the moss. And as he waddled closer to the rustling grass, a soft giggle floated through the air, light and musical, like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Peeking through the stalks, he saw something that made his plastic heart leap. A tiny creature no taller than a thimble, with delicate wings that shimmered like moonlit dewdrops, crouching beside a puddle that reflected the fireflies above. The creature, noticing Rexy's shadow, turned with a startled gasp, but instead of darting away, it tilted its head curiously, its round, silver eyes blinking up at him. "You're not from here," squeaked the creature in a voice like crumpling paper, its wings fluttering nervously. Rexy shook his head, wishing he could speak, and instead nudged a pebble forward with his nose, a silent offering. The creature's tiny hands clasped together, and with a shy smile, it plucked a sparkling thread woven from spider silk and dandelion fluff from its pocket, looping it gently around Rexy's stubby arm like a bracelet. "Come," it whispered, flitting ahead, and Rexy followed, stepping over roots that curled like sleeping snakes, and ducking under leaves heavy with droplets of last night's rain. The jungle seemed to part for them, revealing hidden wonders. A family of beetles polishing their iridescent shells in a mushroom circle. A hollow log humming with the sleepy chatter of glowworms. And at last, a clearing where the air fizzed with the scent of honey and wild strawberries. In the center stood a circle of toadstools, their caps dusted with bioluminescent pollen. And perched atop the tallest one was an old cricket with a violin made of a single pine needle, its melody weaving through the trees like a ribbon of starlight. The tiny winged creature tugged Rexy's bracelet strand, urging him closer. And as the cricket played, the fireflies dipped and swayed above them, choreographing a dance just for him. Rexy's tiny claws tapped in rhythm, and for the first time, he realized he wasn't lost at all. He was right where the night had meant him to be. Rexy sat beneath the glowing toadstools, surrounded by fireflies painting golden swirls in the night air. And suddenly, everything felt different, not scary or strange anymore, but wonderfully right. The cricket's pine needle violin had fallen into a softer song now, one that matched the steady rhythm of Rexy's quiet plastic breaths. And the tiny winged creature, who had introduced itself as Pip, perched on his head, gently patting his bumpy spine as if to say, "You see, you belong here too." The jungle had seemed so vast at first, but now Rexy understood its secret. It wasn't just a place of towering grass and shadowy corners. It was a home full of tiny hearts beating just as bravely as his own. Earlier, Pip had shown him how the fireflies strung their lights between stems to guide lost travelers, how the beetles polished their shells not for vanity, but to reflect moonlight onto dark paths, and how even the oldest, wisest cricket played music, not just for joy, but to weave comfort through the roots and leaves for anyone who needed it. Rexy had thought he was lost, but really, the jungle had been waiting for him all along, waiting to show him that being small didn't mean being alone. Pip flitted down to press a glittering acorn cap into Rexy's claws, a keepsake for his journey. And as he held it, he noticed something miraculous. The faintest glow pulsed inside it, synchronized with his movements, as if the jungle itself had breathed a piece of its magic into his care. The realization warmed him deeper than sunlight ever had. He hadn't just found friends tonight. He'd found his own quiet courage, the kind that comes from trusting the world to be kind. High above, the first hints of dawn tinged the sky lavender, and the fireflies slowly dimmed their lights, tucking themselves into velvety petals for the day. The cricket tucked its violin under its chin one last time, playing a lingering note that seemed to wrap around Rexy like an invisible hug. And Pip squeezed his claw with tiny fingers. Time to go home, the creatures seemed to whisper, not with sadness, but with the certainty that home wasn't just a windowsill anymore. It was this memory, this feeling, this knowing that adventure and safety could live side by side. A breeze stirred the grass then, carrying the scent of morning dew and something suspiciously like warm cocoa. And Rexy knew, without quite knowing how, that if he followed it, it would lead him right back to his cozy room, where his stuffed animal friends would be waiting, their button eyes full of unspoken understanding. The jungle had given him a gift far greater than a path. It had given him a story to carry in his plastic heart, one he'd whisper to the moon through his window every night. So he'd never forget that even the tiniest explorers are never truly lost, only exactly where they need to be. Rexy blinked up at the familiar windowsill as dawn's first light painted the edges of his plastic scales gold. His jungle adventure tucked safe inside him, like the secret glow of Pip's acorn cap resting against his chest. The stuffed animals greeted him with silent smiles, their fuzzy bodies arranged just so along his perch, as if they'd kept watch all night while he explored. Outside, the backyard grass stood perfectly ordinary again, just grass, with dew sparkling normally in the morning sun. Yet Rexy knew the magic hadn't left. It had simply folded itself into the world's quiet corners, waiting for the next twilight to bloom. He settled into his spot with a contented sigh, his tiny claws curling around the edge of the sill as a warm breeze ruffled the curtains beside him, carrying the sleepy scent of lavender from the garden below. One by one, the neighborhood homes darkened their windows, nightlights flickering on like distant fireflies. And as the moon rose, round and kind, as Pip's silver eyes, Rexy felt his own eyelids grow heavy. The last thing he noticed before drifting off was the faintest shimmer along his bracelet of spider silk, pulsing in time with his steady breaths, a gentle reminder that adventures don't end They simply pause, tucked between the pages of dreams, until tomorrow's whispers call them awake again. And so, nestled between his knowing, stuffed friends, beneath a blanket of starlight, Rexy, the tiny explorer, closed his eyes, his plastic heart full of jungle lullabies and the soft certainty that all was well, all was safe, and the night would keep its promises until morning.